For the past 3 years, our supply chain has been shaky to say the least. From limits on items like bread, meat, and eggs, all the way to truckers and a trucker shortage, our supply chain is wrecked. When toilet paper was unable to be bought in 2020, that's whenever I knew we were headed down the road of no return. The days of 100% food security and being able to rely on the supply chain, it's over. Those days are gone. And not to sound too much like Chicken Little, when you factor in truckers going on strike, draconian laws, diesel prices through the roof, and all the other things that's going on in the world, it's no surprise to anybody that it's time to start growing our own food. And in fact, farming as a whole is a dying sector of the economy. They say anything over the age of 35 is in decline. Farmers' average age is over 60. It's on the decline. It is an urgent need. But there is hope. If you're watching this video, if you have the desire to garden this year, to grow your own food, then you are part of the solution, and I welcome you here. And I'm going to try to give you the 5 best vegetables to grow that are going to sustain you, help you survive, and not only supply you, but also the community around you. And instead of sitting back and passively accepting our fate, you and I are stepping up and taking advantage of what we have. So, looking at a survival garden and the top 5 crops that I would grow, I had to look at some criteria first. Number 1, how many calories is it going to sustain based on how much effort you have to put into it. If you've got a very high calorie cost crop, you know, something that you're having to put more work into than you're getting out, for example, celery, it's not worth it. It's great to have things that are going to be minimal work for maximum return. And not only do you want a caloric surplus, but you want to be able to store that food easily, cheaply, and with minimal work. I'm looking at crops you don't need glass jars, you do not have to can, and you do not have to freeze in order to use them all year long. Let's go ahead and jump right in. At number 5, I've got onions and I've got radish. Now, radish and onions are 2 plants that you can get started early in the spring. You can get them in the ground before you can get a lot of other crops in the ground. And, especially in terms of radish, they grow very quickly. Within 45 to 60 days, your radishes are going to be ready to go. And with onions, you can pick them early and they're ready to eat. They're just a smaller size. I put these at the bottom of the list because you're going to have to can them, pickle them, and put them in a jar or freeze them if you want to preserve them long term. I just put this at the beginning because these are going to fill the gap between the starvation months, January, February, March, and whenever you're actually going to start harvesting things, end of June and July. These are something that's going to get you through the hard times if you absolutely have to. It's not something that's going to sustain you readily for a long period of time, but they're quickly available and you can overwinter them and they're ready to go early in the spring. So that's why I put them at number 5. For number 4, I've picked winter squash. Now, if you go to your grocery store, you can see they store these with 0 refrigeration. This will work at your house also. They don't have as high of a calorie output as something like a potato or something to that effect, but they will store all winter. They have a thick, very hard rind, and they're going to get you through. Here's a variety that I'm growing. This is Cushaw pumpkin. Some people refer to it as Cushaw squash. It's a squash that is native to my region, which is Appalachian Mountains. It's going to last me all winter long. I'll be able to plant these all summer, and I'll be able to harvest them early, mid, and late summer. You can do soup with it. You can make pies with it. You can mash it like a sweet potato. It really is an excellent food. And it's got a historical value in terms of the Three Sisters companion planting. And that brings me to another criteria that I've looked at is what can you plant this with? Just like the onions, those are excellent to plant with a lot of different things. I'll get into that here in a few more. But with squash, you can plant it with things like corn. You can plant it with things like onions. And you can share it with a lot of different things. It makes an excellent ground cover. It's not going to let the moisture just evaporate quickly from the ground. And like I said, it's going to last all winter long. This is something you need to survive. Whether you like the taste or not, it is well worth buying a couple hundred, yes, I said a couple hundred seeds, putting them in the ground and letting them produce. It's too valuable not to have, and if you don't use them, feed them to your chickens, give them away, use them for yard decorations, whatever you want to do. And this brings me to my 3rd top crop. Now this one might surprise you, but it's the potato. Potatoes are excellent. They're going to have everything you need in terms of nutrients to sustain you for a short period of time. It's not something you're going to thrive on, but it'll fill you up, it'll stick to your bones, and it'll keep you going so that you can survive during hard times. Now, the reason I didn't put the potatoes at the very top is because, number one, when you cut the eyes of the potato, you waste a lot of it. Number two is because it can be a difficult crop to grow. If it's above ground and it turns green, it's not really good to eat. The leaves are not edible, and a lot of times it's just a one and done thing. But they're a great option because you can store them quite easily in, 50 to 60 degrees, and they're ready to sprout in the spring, and you cut them up, put them in the ground, and you got a whole new crop. So potatoes are something I would value, but they're not my top choice. If you're going to use potatoes, I advise you to get a indeterminate variety. Now, indeterminate means they're going to be able to grow, and you can pile up dirt around them, and they're going to continue to grow. You can pile up some more dirt, and it's going to continue to grow, and you'll have potatoes down the whole way. And this is great for vertical gardening. It saves space, and you can get a lot of potatoes out of one single plant. Now, if you have a determinate or a bush variety of potato, you're going to get one run out of it. You put it in the ground, you cut up the eye and put it in the ground, and that's it. You hill it up and you let it grow. Behind me, we've got a field full of corn here. This is some good field corn, and this is my second best option to grow. This is called a dent corn because if you open it up, you can see here that the corn has got little dents in it, and this is drying, and it'll have some dents here. And when this dries, this makes excellent food for yourself or for your animals. Over 70% of grain grown in America is grown for animal consumption, and good or bad, that's the way it is. This is a high calorie option. You can really do some companion planting here. You can plant this with all sorts of different vegetables. Squash, like I said, beans, and basically it will grow up and you can trellis off of it. So corn is a great option, very high in calories. It saves for a very long time. This will literally last for years when dried properly. And the ability to save seeds is remarkable. All you got to do is once it's dry, take it off the cob, and it'll last for multiple years so that you can plant it. And each stalk here, you're going to get about one, two, maybe 3 ears of corn off of each. And if you think about that and you plant that out along an area, you're going to get quite a bit of food that's going to last for a long time. And with corn, you can eat it in the milk stage, which is basically, early young corn that's still full of the juice and the water. And you can let it dry, and that's the best way to preserve it. You don't have to use a dryer. You don't have to do anything great. All you got to do is let it grow, and then let it dry on the stalk. Then it's ready to harvest. It'll keep all year. You can make grits, hominy, flour, all sorts of different things out of it to eat, polenta, and it's really a staple crop in many cultures. It's very easy to grow. It is a heavy feeder. You're going to need to give it some nitrogen, but other than that, corn's a great option to have in your garden, and I recommend everybody to grow it. So this brings me to my number one vegetable. This is a sweet potato. I grew these sweet potatoes last year, and it is the ultimate crop in my opinion. And here's why I put it over corn. I've put it over potatoes. I've put it over squash. Number one, it's calorically dense, just like a regular Irish potato. There's a ton of calories in here, but not only can you start this differently than a potato, what you do is you put this in dirt up to about halfway, or you start it in a glass jar, and you get slips that pop out, you break them off, you put them in the ground. So you get a ton, and I don't know if you can see this, all the eyes on the potato are going to sprout starts whenever I have them. You actually see one sprouting out now from the very tip. Once you get the slips started, you can pop them off, plant them, and you can still eat this potato. When you do an Irish potato, on the other hand, you have to cut it up and you waste those calories. Looking at it purely on survival, a sweet potato will regenerate itself and you can still eat it without putting it in the ground and making it grow other ones. You can grow hundreds of sweet potatoes from one, and you can still eat this one potato. Now, another thing is you can see right here, this is where a pest, I'm pretty sure it was a mole or a vole or some creature, tunneled down and ate part of my sweet potato. But as you can tell, it hasn't hurt it. This is January. I picked these in October. I put them in a cool, medium warm room, just a room in my house that's dark, and they have done great. They're still firm. I can put this in the oven at 450 degrees for 45 minutes. It'll be super sweet, high in calories, and it'll sustain me. I love them. You can turn it into a pie. They last, like I said, you don't need a jar to preserve these. And to start seeds from this, it's wonderful. I do want to mention some honorable mentions. Okay, number one is a tomato. Tomatoes are great. The reason it didn't make the list is because obviously you're going to have to can it to preserve it. If you get an indeterminate variety, and depending on where you live, you can get tomatoes for most of the year if they're under plastic, and it will continue producing large vegetables that you can eat. It's a great option, but like I said, it didn't make the list because of canning and preserving. Now, number two honorable mention is going to be green beans. Green beans complete the three sisters: squash, corn, and green bean. And the reason I didn't put green beans on the list is like the others, is storage. Now, you can dry the green beans and then rehydrate them, but in terms of storability and calorie value, I chose corn and sweet potatoes and regular potatoes over the green beans. Another option will be black-eyed peas. These are a great option along with the green beans I just talked about for fixing the nitrogen in the soil, as well as being able to dry them out and eat them, but they're a lot of work for less of a reward. So that's why they didn't make the list, but they'll be worth your time if you want to grow them. Another option is garlic. It goes along the same lines as onions. You know, you can plant your onions with your sweet potatoes. You can plant your onions with your corn, with your cabbage, with all the different things that you're growing, because what it does is it drives away pests, and it's really a great option. And garlic does the same thing. So garlic is something that you might want to look into, and it made the honorable mentions list for today. And that brings me to my last honorable mention, and that is the mighty sunflower. This is sunflower seeds from one sunflower. There's hundreds of them in here, and what you can do is you can roast these seeds and you can eat them. You can also put them in with the three sisters and turn it into a four sisters, kind of grow it all together. Sunflowers are great for attracting pollinators. They produce a lot of seeds for you to eat if you want to, but they didn't make the list because, like I said, you know, it's a lot of work still. You're going to have to shell the seeds to eat them, and it's not quite as good of a reward as you're going to get from the others that made the list. Looking at it purely from a survival standpoint, if you grow these 5 things, number one, you're going to be able to use them in a tight space. You can grow a lot of these together, such as the winter squash, the onions, the corn, and the sweet potatoes. You can actually grow these all in the same area and double, triple, quadruple up your space for what it's worth. Now, you're going to have to fertilize it real well with compost or wood chips or whatever you have at hand. Fertilize it as good as you can, and you can turn a small space into an extremely valuable piece of property for your plants. You want to make use of your property. If you want to grow big old sweet potatoes like this, honestly, you just got to start them, put them in the ground, and wait. I really believe that this is the best way to food security, and if you disagree with me, if you have any other ideas, put them down below. We want to hear from you and see what you have to say. And with it being January, if you're watching this video in January, February, March, it's go time. Get your seeds ready to go now. If you want to watch starting onions in January and how to do it the cheapest, most effective way, I got this video right here. Go click it and check it out. You're going to get a head start on your garden today. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you around. Have fun. Grow something that's going to help you and your community out. I'll see you around.